All right, Rob. Of the games this weekend, a lot of good matchups. You got Tom Brady, the GOAT in most people's eyes, against Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, making his first start. I mean, you've got Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, who owns the Chiefs, but is in turn owned by the Browns. He's 0-4 against the Browns. They get to him, have sacked him 17 times in those 4 games. And the Browns have beaten the Bengals 8 out of their last 9 meetings. So some interesting games. And one of them is Miami at the LA Chargers. And it's interesting for several reasons. Obviously, both teams vying for the playoffs, and the Chargers very much in a desperate situation. But also the quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa against Justin Herbert. And Rob, you know this. Justin Herbert has been prematurely crowned as a great quarterback. The talent is great. The eye test, he passes all that. He looks fantastic. But he has yet to lead a team to the playoffs. And we're not talking about him playing in Jacksonville and hadn't led him to the playoffs. He has talent. He's got receivers. Now, this year I know they're banged up, but Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, he's had some good receivers, and they have not been able to get it done. And so Bill Barnwell of ESPN does a great job there. He wrote a column, Rob, and he was talking about the class of 2020. And I got to say this quickly. It's a slight bit of a tangent, but remember a couple months ago, maybe it was a month and a half ago, where we talked about that article in Yahoo that was bemoaning the fact that the quarterbacks in the class of 2021 weren't panning out, right?
Right.
Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, these guys. And you and I both were like, this is ridiculous, because you got other young quarterbacks from other classes.
Yeah, maybe those guys, but
Right.
there are plenty of other guys who have come along, right?
Absolutely.
And everybody's not going to make it. We talk about it all the time.
Right. I mean, half the league is not going to have great quarterbacks, at least. More than that, to be honest. There's going to be a handful of great quarterbacks at any given time. I mean, really great.
Every year there's 10 or 12 teams that need a quarterback.
Yep. And so, Rob, the class of 2020, just a year earlier, fantastic quarterback class. At least it's looking that way so far. This was the draft order of the top 4 picks that year, Rob, as far as quarterbacks. Joe Burrow went number 1. Tua went number 5, second quarterback taken. Justin Herbert went 6, and Jalen Hurts went 53. Now, Barnwell revisited that draft and said if you redraft it today, the order would be Joe Burrow first, Jalen Hurts second as far as quarterbacks taken, Tua third, and Justin Herbert, Rob, would be 4th. And again, I think he might have been ranked higher than that in all quarterbacks going into the season. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you tend to agree with Barnwell, or where you at on it?
I don't get, I mean, that's like, I don't know, it sounds like Captain Obvious to me. Like he's just going off of who's playing well right now. You know what I mean? Like as well as Jalen Hurts is playing, Chris, if I look at everything, he hadn't won a playoff game. He struggled. You know what I mean? Like if I looked at everything, if I've just picked today who's playing great now, then yeah, that should be your list. It's got to be something more than that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like that's just like what's happening today. If you ask me, oh yeah, who's playing great now, and I give you a list, that's the list I would get. So I'm not that impressed by that list. I don't think there's anything so eye-popping there based on who's playing well, where unless you tell me that, yeah, Justin Herbert's struggling this year, but, you know, they got this going on. But if you look at it, he's the fastest guy to a certain amount of touchdowns, or you know what I mean, or
right.
or passes over 20 yards, like something that I don't know. I don't, like, I'm a little surprised by this list because it sounds obvious to me.
Yeah, where I agree with you, and I think, correct me if you're not saying this, it is, the verdict is still out. The verdict is very much still out, Rob. And now I do think most people, I certainly would say Joe Burrow's number one.
We have to take Joe Burrow
clear.
number one.
Right.
I mean, Joe
he
Burrow.
He went to a team, Rob. We've said it at the time. People thought he should demand, that Cincinnati not draft him. He's turned them into one of the best teams in the league.
And think about this, Chris. He got hurt his rookie year, came back his sophomore year, took a team to the Super Bowl, won an AFC championship game in Kansas City. I could go on and on and on. Like right. He's number one.
So he's definitely number one. And I agree with you. After that, it gets, it's just completely
who's playing well now?
Indecisive, right. If you would have done this before the season, it would have been Burrow, Herbert.
Yep.
And Tua and Hurts was up in the air. Maybe
I think Hurts would have been fourth. I do.
Yeah,
coming off of last year.
Right. Tua we didn't know a lot about because he wasn't playing as much. And Hurts had come on at the end of last year. But Rob, we had people on the phone from Philadelphia thinking he couldn't throw the football.
Yep.
And so that's where I definitely agree with you in that the verdict is still very much out. And that's not a cop-out. That's not, I don't know who to pick. It is. It's out. Because eye test, Herbert looks as good as almost anybody in the NFL. But you're wondering, what is it? Why can't this guy, and I think they're going to get a new coach, Rob. They need to. I'm not saying Brandon Staley's the worst coach in the world, but come on. How many chances do you get?
They got too much talent.
Too much talent. And so we'll see what he's like with a new coach. But I tend to agree with you in that, right now, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Herbert, it's all very close. Here's where what I'd say about the guys. Obviously, Burrow's one. I'm a big guy on this. I don't think you are, but I'm big on the intangibles.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
And Jalen Hurts,
I didn't like that movie.
Okay. I have felt like he's had those since Alabama. And seeing the way when he was starting there, it was that he's very smart. He's a coach's son. He, is a leader. Everybody looks up to him, all that stuff. Smart. And then when he loses his job to Tua, he shows it. He handled it so well, went to Oklahoma, didn't complain, didn't rip Tua, none of that, just goes to Oklahoma and plays terrifically. And now, Rob, particularly, he's a good passer. He's not great. He may get to be great at some point, but he's good right now. But the whole package, the leadership, the intelligence, the passing, and the running. And now that you are seeing quarterbacks run it more, that plays into his skill set. So, right now he looks great. Tua, Rob, and this is where I would say, this is why I give Tua the slight edge over Herbert, at least at this moment. Herbert, Rob, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, he's had some really good receivers, right? And still hasn't been able to, other than put up some good individual numbers, he hasn't led them anywhere.
And
Tua's, right?
As soon as he got Hill, he turned into a different guy. I got weapons. Now I can do some stuff. I agree.
That's it.
I agree. That's why I would do the same. But Herbert should be considered higher just because he's the prototypical quarterback. Right. Size, height, you know what I mean? What you look for, what a quarterback is supposed to look like. He is that.
No, I agree. And I'm not ready to say he doesn't have intangibles because I still am impressed by the way he stepped in and got his first start. Remember Tyrod Taylor got stabbed
by the doctor
on the way to the field by the doctor.
Right.
And here Herbert steps in there against the Chiefs, no less, and plays great. First start. So that's an intangible, that poise, that belief in yourself and all that. But at some point, he's got to show he can, rally the troops and lead them to be as good as they should be. And look, Rob, the thought is that Sean Payton, who has said he's looking to coach soon. Rob, if I'm Sean Payton, I mean, that's the job I really would want.
What? The Chargers?
Chargers.
Yeah, no. I mean, they got
talent,
stuff there. They got a quarterback
right?
for the next 10, 12 years.
Yep.
You got everything in place. You just got to get that team healthy and and stop making dumb decisions as a coach. And they should have made the playoffs a year ago, Chris. They should have.
Yep. And so, yeah, the bottom line is the verdict's still out. And I think, Rob, too, these guys are so close from 2 to 4 that obviously that thing could switch around a lot. But all 4 of them, Rob, could be stars. They all 4 could be stars.
Well, the way they're playing this year, absolutely. Like, especially.
The top 3 are in the MVP race.
Right.
Tua won't win it because he's, missed 3 games, and last week he was bad. But Hurts is very much alive. He might be the front runner right now.
Remember, Charles Barkley chimed in on our show.
Yeah,
he's like, hey, he's a Philly guy. I know Charles is like all Philly, but he's like, Jalen Hurts is the MVP.
No, he is
got a
neck
great
and
case
neck with Mahomes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Burrow is moving up there, right? He was 3rd in the latest odds, and he's
And when you think about depending on how they finished the season, Chris, because they lost like their first 2 and 2 out of their first 3 or 4. So they were off to a bad start. And if he turns it around,
no doubt.
he could make, and then with the Kansas City win and a couple others, he could make a case.
Absolutely. He's very much alive because, Rob, they got some big games remaining. You mentioned they obviously beat Kansas City. They still got Buffalo and Baltimore and Tampa Bay. Think about it. If he goes out there and plays well against Brady, Patriots too, Belichick at least, right? And then Josh Allen beats him. And then Baltimore, last game of the season, if Lamar is back and they may need that game, right? I mean, he might have the best opportunity. I think Jalen, they play Dallas, right? So he's got some big games. Kansas City, Rob, their schedule is light at this point. Now, maybe that could help Mahomes in that, he really puts up some huge numbers and they win out. That could help him.
Yeah, unless they win, but he doesn't put up numbers. You know what I mean? Against some of the, then that would hurt.
They got the Broncos twice, the Texans, Seattle, and the Raiders. So they should really win all those games. And you're right. If he doesn't put up big numbers, if some of them are closer than they should be,
right,
and he struggles, it could hurt him. But yeah, I think Burrow, with some of these big games coming up, he really has a chance to distinguish himself and maybe move ahead.